Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, Signature Events for Small Libraries. I'm Jamie Monchik with the Nicolet Federated Library System in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And with me today is Cassie Guthrie. And I saw Cassie present at the PLA conference about a year ago in Indianapolis. And she talked about a lot of these events that her libraries have done and some of the fundraising things that they have done as well. And I thought it was a really great presentation and that it would bode well here in Wisconsin for some of our smaller libraries. And she agreed to talk about it. Cassie is currently the library director at the Grief Public Library in Rochester, New York, but she also has been a director at other size libraries and has been a library system director as well. So without further ado, Cassie, whenever you are ready.
Okay, thank you very much, Jamie. As Jamie mentioned, I'm currently a library director outside of Rochester, New York, and I would like to quickly share with you just a little bit more detail about my library career because it really has a direct relationship to my experience in both hosting and attending signature events. And now my slides aren't forwarding. Let's try again. There we go. So my first library job was in White Plains, New York, which is outside of New York City, and I was there for about 8 years, and I was the community relations librarian. It's a pretty large library. The service population is 56,000. And in 2005, the White Plains Library Foundation established a signature event that was called the Treasures Gala. I had the opportunity to work with the library director on that event. It was my first exposure to a signature event in a library, and I was completely hooked after that experience. I had so much fun. It was something that I continued to think about. And in 2007, when I moved on to the Seymour Library, which is a smaller library, service population about 20,000, and became a library director myself, I founded a signature event at Seymour called After Hours at the Library. It was a scaled-down version of the event that I had worked on in White Plains, and I'm very happy to say 7, 8 years later, they are still doing that event every year. Then in 2010, I moved on and became a system director at the Pioneer Library System, 42 small libraries across 4 counties. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to attend a lot of events that my member libraries were sponsoring, fundraising events. I'm going to show you some of those today. And then currently, I'm at the Grief Public Library, much larger library, 96,000. Haven't quite figured out the opportunity for a signature event, but I have a feeling I'll probably be doing one in the next year or two. So what I wanted to cover with you today, we're going to talk a little bit about the what and why of signature events. I'm going to show you in depth a few events that I attended and took some pictures at. I'm going to show you some quick slides of invitations and photographs of different event theme ideas that are kind of themed to literacy, literature, and libraries. We're going to talk a little bit about auctions and the importance of thank yous. I'm going to share with you some quick tips for getting started. And then we're also going to briefly cover planning and budgeting. So when I use the terms signature event, I have a pretty simple definition that I like to use. It's a unique annual event that is well attended, is successful, whatever your measure of success might be, and it's also owned by an organization, in this case a library. And that just really means that it's something that is branded to you, that is associated with you, and that somebody else in your community wouldn't be able to do as successfully. So the reasons why libraries do signature events, I have a list of 6. To raise funds to support special projects is probably one of the main reasons that libraries decide to pursue a signature event. But it can also be a really great avenue to increase awareness of the library service program. So if you're in a community where people maybe haven't come to the library since they were younger and you're trying to bring everyone in again to see what's new at the library, a signature event can be a really great way to do that. It can also be a tool for community and relationship building. It can generate positive publicity. I'm going to show you an example of an event that gets huge coverage in the local weekly newspaper in a small community. It can be a tool for relationship polishing. When I was at the Seymour Library in Brockport, we were raising funds. That was probably our number one reason for pursuing an event. But the second reason was the library had had kind of a revolving door of library directors. There had been some issues with the library board. So we wanted to come out strong with an event that kind of showed that we were all pulling together and doing something fun for the community. And then my last point is they're an awful lot of fun. I really enjoy both planning signature events and also attending them. So moving on to the event show and tell portion, and I did send Jamie both the PowerPoint presentation and also at the end of this presentation there's a link to my Pinterest page where a lot of these invitations are posted as well as photographs that I've taken at events. So the first one that I'll tell you about is that event at the White Plains Public Library. This is the invitation from the second year that it was offered. And as I mentioned earlier, it was a pretty big event, really made an impression on me. It was $100 a ticket. Of course, this was a community outside of New York City that could reasonably ask for $100 a ticket for an event. There was a 30-member planning committee. The event included a silent auction, 3 food stations around the library, and a treasure hunt that was put together with clues. There was a journal, advertising space was sold, and there were some major sponsors of the event, including IBM and Target. So again, this is in a large community with people who could afford $100 a ticket. And when I moved on to Brockport, I really wanted to do something like this, but there was no way I was going to be able to charge $100 a ticket in Brockport, which is really a rural community. It's also a college town. So the event that I established there, we called After Hours at the Library. We held it on a Saturday night after closing, and it was an evening of food and fun at the Seymour Library. We charged $25 per ticket. And I will say that the library board thought I was crazy, and no one would come to an event at the library that cost $25 a ticket in Brockport. And I said, well, just let me try, and if it doesn't work, I'll take full responsibility. It ended up being very successful, so sometimes you have to push your board in the direction of trying something. We used a lot of volunteers from within the community to keep our expenses low. In the slide you're looking at right now in the upper right corner, staffing our beverage table are some volunteers from the Circle K, which is the college version of Kiwanis from the College at Brockport. And the first year that we did this event, we did it to raise funds for an early literacy station in the library, which we wanted to call the Tot Spot. And the second year, which is I think the invitation we're looking at right now, the second annual, it was to raise funds for a teen area. And both years, after expenses, again using a lot of volunteers and soliciting sponsorships, we raised about $13,000. This is still at the After Hours event, and this is a giving tree, which was something that we did that was very successful. We unveiled it the night of the event, and it was these are 2 different versions of it. The one on the left, I think, was an artificial tree that we used with some plastic leaves, and the one on the right is an actual tree in the library that we stuck cards on. And I'm going to show you on the next slide a close-up of the ticket. So people, as they mingled around the event, were able to walk around this tree and see how if they wanted to make a donation to the library's project, either the first year for the Tot Spot or the second year for the teen scene, they could take one of these tickets off, take it over to the cashier, and make an additional donation right on the spot. And then after the event, we just left the tree up in the library for several weeks afterwards, and people continued to pick those tickets up and to purchase things on our behalf. So at the event, up here on the slide in the upper left corner is a town councilwoman and the town clerk, who we included on the event committee, which I think is why part of the reason why we were very successful in getting a lot of attendees is that we had a committee of people who were really well connected in the community, invited their friends, let the people that they worked with know about the event. And then on the right-hand side is Ann Panning, who is an author who is also a professor at the college in Brockport. And she had just won a Flannery O'Connor Award for her book of short stories. So she was there as our speaker for the first year, and she's also a connector. Everyone in Brockport knows her, so a lot of people, I think, attended the event just to support her and to hear her speak that night. So the next event I'm going to tell you about is one which took place at a very small community library in Orleans County, New York, in Holly. And the population of the town of Holly is about 1,800 people. They do this event every year. I've attended 2 years, 2013 and 2014. You have to get the tickets very early because they sell out. It's really one of the biggest events in the entire town. And they raise every year about $1,500 from this particular event, which they use for their summer reading program. And that's really what they hope to raise, is about $1,500. So they call it Wine Tasting and Farmers Market Gala. There are quite a few wineries on Lake Ontario, which is close to Holly, and they bring them in for this event. So here in the upper left on the slide, you can see the outside of the Holly Library. It's very small. It's in a little strip mall right on the main street in Holly. And the bottom right, the event takes place in the library, and those are people who are lined up to pick up their wine tasting glass. So as I mentioned, they bring in several area wineries to do tastings. You can also purchase cases of wine at the event if you want to. They have some local entertainment. Here we have a family that's well known in Holly that provided the entertainment this particular evening. And they keep the food rather simple. That's a display of cheeses. They get some gift cards from local supermarkets who want to support the event, and they put out simple food to go along with the event. The farmers market portion of it, it's a very agricultural community, so they bring in this case, Penna Farms came in with plants for sale. Herd Orchards, which is an apple farm nearby, brought in tastings of, I think that's jelly and jam and crackers, and you could also purchase jellies and jams right there at the event. So this is probably my favorite signature event in a small library. It takes place every Valentine's Day in a small library in Wyoming County, which is south of where I live. And their service population is just under 3,000, and their staff is pretty much a full-time director and one part-time clerk. So this event, they use the trustees, help out quite a bit in planning and executing this event. And I mentioned that signature events in small communities can be wonderful vehicles for publicity. You can see over here on the right-hand side is something, it's actually a web shot of a local paper called the Arcade Warsaw. I think it's the Penny Saver. And they get publicity both pre-event and post-event. So this is an example of a pre-event publicity around chocolate in the stacks. So at this event, the Friends of the Library makes all of the chocolate, and you can see there that they present it just beautifully at the event. It's pretty simple. It's chocolate and grapes. There's no entry fee or ticket cost to get into Chocolate in the Stacks. It's always on Valentine's Day, whatever day of the week that falls on. So, but what you do is you purchase tickets for what they call a Chinese auction. And they set up baskets all around the library. It's not a very large library, so they're putting them on the top of bookshelves and pretty much any place they can find space. And in 2011, they had 60 baskets that they auctioned off. They had 93 people attend the event, and they raised about $1,400. And all of the baskets are really, actually most of the baskets are not high-ticket items. They mostly reflect the businesses in the community, and a lot of them are also donations from private individuals. So over here on the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see it's a pair of rain boots from the local hardware store, along with a gift certificate for one large cheese and pepperoni pizza, and the library wrapped it up very quickly and simply in some basket wrap and put it next to the mason jar. So you buy the tickets at the desk as you walk in, and then you walk around the library and you put as many tickets as you'd like into the mason jar next to the item that you're hoping to win. And here's an example of after-event publicity, and I just love this picture. The caption reads, "Why is this little boy all smiles? He won a cool prize at the Chocolate in the Stacks fundraiser held on Valentine's Day at the Cordelia A. Green Library in Castile. For a story and more pictures, see page 12." So I think he's got a truck there in a box. It's a wonderful community event. Everyone's there. The mayor's there. Everyone who's anyone in this community attends this event every Valentine's Day. This is another one that I love to talk about. I attended this, I think, in 2013, which was either the first or second year that they did it. And up until now, all of the events that I've showed you are events that took place in the library. For the Caledonia Library, that's not a possibility for them. You can see in the flyer there promoting the Much Ado About Our Library event is a picture of the Caledonia Library. It's very small inside. There really would be no room even to host something for 25 people. So what they did is right across the street from the library in Caledonia is the Caledonia Village Inn. And the population in Caledonia is about 4,300, and they decided to host their Much Ado About the Library event at the Village Inn. The staff at the Village Inn they're just wonderful. Over here on the right-hand side of the slide, those are two staff from the Village Inn. One is dressed up as the Cat in the Hat, and the other one is Huck Finn or Tom Sawyer. So their staff dress up as various literary characters and walk around doing past hors d'oeuvres. And they theme the hors d'oeuvres sometimes too. One year there were Zorba the Greek pastry puffs. Another year there were Velveteen Rabbit carrot cakes. So the staff at the Village Inn really has a lot of fun with this particular event. So in addition to the ticket sale price, the library also brought in revenue from a lottery tree raffle, which is a small, I think they used a small plant or maybe even a branch and then just tied a bunch of lottery tickets to it and raffled that off. They also do a silent auction, and you can see in the upper right of the slide there one of the auction items. And they also had some miscellaneous sponsorship donations come in, and they receive a discount from the Village Inn. And the bottom left photo there, standing up with the group of four ladies, is Renata, who is the library director at the Caledonia Library. She called me the morning after the first year that they did Much Ado About the Library, and she said, "Cassie, I don't even know how to tell you this, but we raised over $8,000 last night." So it was hugely successful for them, and they continue to do this particular event every year. Okay, here's another off-site event to benefit a small library in Orleans County. And this library is chartered to serve 4,100 people, and they did it at a local winery called Leonard Oaks. And I attended this event. It was a very hot day. I remember how hot the day was, but walking up to the table, which you see here a picture of the two gentlemen staffing the welcome table, they were so friendly and welcoming. They were two trustees on the library board, and they thanked me for attending the event. I picked up my specially themed Eat, Drink, and Be literary wine glass, which you can see there on the slide, branded with Yates Community Library and a picture of the library. I was told about the basket raffle. They did one basket, and I think it's shown there on the table on the right-hand side. And they just did one raffle, so they kept that kind of simple. There was a big band playing in the winery's pavilion, and they had seating set up, It would have worked whether it had rained or not. Luckily, it didn't rain that day, so they were able to get people out on the lawn. But there is also seating available underneath the pavilion. One of the questions that I get asked a lot when I give this presentation is, does a signature event have to be a fundraiser? And the answer is no, it doesn't. You might do a signature event for a whole bunch of other reasons, and I do have one example of that. Back to my time in Brockport at the Seymour Library, when I first started there, I joined the Kiwanis Club. I was new to the community, new to that part of the state, so I really wanted to get connected quickly. And I spent about 6 months just kind of listening to what they were talking about at their meetings. And they were looking for a project to partner with the library on. And they were also very interested in earning patches for their club banner. I'm sure some of you on the phone are involved with Rotary or Kiwanis. And these clubs have so much pride in what they do for the community. And that was certainly the case in Brockport. So I did a little research when I got back to the library, and I found a service project on the Kiwanis International website that was called Read Around the World. So the simple parameters of the program were for local clubs like the one in Brockport to get books in the hands of children. So I thought about that for a little while and started poking around on the internet, and then found on the Toronto Public Library's website a bookmark contest. And I shamelessly stole their idea and mocked up a draft and took it back to the Kiwanis, and they absolutely loved it. So what we did was we partnered with the elementary school librarians in Brockport to get the word out to kids about the contest in the schools. And every child, kindergarten through 5th grade, who entered the contest, and you can see the entry form right there, received a book courtesy of the Kiwanis Club with a book plate inside of the book, and we used the Kiwanis logo to let people know that it was purchased courtesy of the Kiwanis Club. And you can see the two young ladies at the top of the slide are holding up the book that they received. Our judges for the contest were local elected officials, our Friends of the Library president, the library board president, and the school librarians. And I mentioned that part of the reason in Brockport for doing a signature event, the after-hours event, was some relationship polishing and some community building, and the bookmark contest also accomplished that for us. So there was a big party at the end of the contest where we announced the winners, and members of the Kiwanis Club gave out the books and also were given an opportunity to make remarks to the group. We had a large crowd in the children's room waiting to hear who had won the contest. And we followed up the presentations with an ice cream social, which was staffed by the Circle K students from the college and funded by the Friends of the Library. And I'm also proud to say that this bookmark contest continues to go on today. Actually, I have a third grader in the Brockport schools, and he came home from school with an entry contest for, I think, the 6th or 7th annual Design a Bookmark contest. So in this part of the country and part of New York State, 5K races are kind of big. So this is another opportunity for a library to do a signature event around a 5K. And this is one that took place in the Pioneer Library System. It was established in 2010, and the Clifton Springs Library serves a community of about 2,000. So what they decided to do was take advantage of the community's biggest annual festival weekend, which is called the Sulphur Springs Festival, and schedule their Book It 5K walk and run for the same time frame. I do have to tell you that 2013 was the last year for this event, and the library director explained to me what happened. They really did see a steady increase in participants each of the 4 years that they sponsored the 5K, but the amount of money that they were raising didn't justify the amount of staff and volunteer time that was spent organizing and executing the event. So sometimes you try a signature event and it just doesn't work for whatever reason. Either people aren't attending, or in the case of the Book It 5K walk and run, people are attending, but it's just not worth it for the amount of money raised. So mini golf programs in libraries, very, very popular a few years ago. And this is one that I attended a couple of years ago back at my old stomping grounds in White Plains. I actually made the trip there to see this because I was so interested when I received the invitation. And it was, they brought in an outside vendor to set up a mini golf course inside of the library. And you can see here they had a casual buffet. It was basically pizza from Uno Pizzeria, who was one of their sponsors. Beer, wine, there was a cotton candy machine, a silent auction. And they did have some sponsors, a bank, PepsiCo, which is located in White Plains, was also one of the sponsors. Here's a couple of pictures from the event, and you can see the mini golf course that was brought in by the outside vendor and set up. And that green piece of paper that you see just behind the hole there lists the sponsor for that particular hole. They had a silent auction. There's an example, 3 golf novels. So they themed the whole event around golf, and a lot of the items in the silent auction were golf-related, sports-related. So this is a good example of where you can adapt an idea from a much larger library like White Plains to a smaller library. So this is a small library in Wayne County, New York, that decided to host its own miniature golf family fun event in February. So they really just went to the local Goodwill and bought some putters and used golf balls, took some library discards, you can see a picture of that on the right, glued them together and used a hole saw to drill a hole through the book, and kids just came in and spent the day kind of knocking holes through these knocking balls through book holes throughout the library. So the Eagle Free Library, which is in Bliss, New York, and it's a very small town. There's very little business left in Bliss itself. The population is about 1,200. They held a golf tournament that was sponsored by Barber's Automotive, which is the local garage in town. They raised about $4,000 at their first annual golf tournament, and I was so intrigued by this because it's in the Pioneer Library System, and I would visit Bliss, and it's such a small town. I thought, oh my gosh, how did they do this? So I asked one of the trustees at the library who was responsible for most of the organization, and she told me that the brother-in-law of another library trustee came up with the idea and talked it up amongst the guys that hang out and come through the garage he runs, which is Barber's Automotive. They sold 2 sponsors for each hole, again, mostly to people coming through the garage, and held a 50-50 raffle and a Chinese auction, which trustees brought around to 5 different venues in town over a 2-week period leading up to the event. They had donors for the food and sponsor hole signs, held random drawings for sets of golf balls, and gave away some imprinted golf balls to the tournament winning team and winning couples team. And she also relayed to me that the tournament was the easy part of it. It was the auction that was difficult because they moved it around to so many different locations. But overall, it was very successful, and they're continuing to offer this event to the community every year. And I like this example because the idea for it and the push behind it didn't come from anyone really associated with the library. It was a local garage in town that wanted to do something for the library. Okay, next I'm going to show you just very quickly some event theme ideas. Barbecue and blues for books. I liked the graphics that they used for this. It was a very fun event. You could use that name for any kind of barbecue that was raising funds for your library. This is another one of my favorites I just happened to see in the newspaper in Buffalo, New York. And this isn't to benefit a library. It's to benefit literacy initiatives of Project Flight. But I just thought Booktoberfest for an October signature event in a library was just a great idea. Barley and Books. This is a small library in a community near where I live that actually took place in one of the trustees' homes. There really is no location in Byron Burgeon to host an event either at the library or off-site, so it ended up taking place in someone's home, and they did, I think, beer tastings and wine tastings. Wine, Wood, and Song. This is the Wood Library in Canandaigua, New York. I love alliteration, so I thought Wood, Wine, and Song was just kind of a fun way to play with the name of their library. They held this at a local park called Sonnenberg Gardens and Museum. They had it catered, they had wine samplings, and they also had a live auction, which was emceed by a state legislator who was from Canandaigua. This is also the Wood Library. This was 2013 was the first year that they did this. In Canandaigua, they have a community college that's located in Canandaigua, and were able to, through one of their trustees who had a connection with the community college, able to use space there to host a big night in a small town. It was a superstar showcase and entertainment extravaganza. This was the library director's idea. She was a little bit nervous about it. I attended the first year. It was $75 a ticket, so they didn't get a huge turnout the first year, but it was kind of a review show. They had a variety of performance acts, and it was successful enough that even though they just about broke even that first year, they decided to continue because there was enough buzz in the community that they knew they would get more people attending in subsequent years. So back to golf, mini golf for a minute. Caddy Stacks, Caddy Shack is one of my favorite movies, so I thought Caddy Stacks was just a wonderful way to theme your signature event if you were going to do something around mini golf or golf. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about auctions, and Jamie and I were chatting just before the webinar started. I'm from New York State, so we have our own particular sets of laws around raffles and gaming. I don't know what the laws are in Wisconsin, so I would say that if you are going to pursue an event with any kind of auction or raffle, you should probably check in to see what the requirements are, if any, in your municipality or if it's a state law. So just quickly to talk about the different kinds of auctions that I've seen at signature events. If you watch Storage Wars, you know pretty much what a traditional auction is. And you'd need an auctioneer, obviously, but that doesn't have to be a professional necessarily. In the case of Wood, Wine, and Song, I mentioned the state legislator was the auctioneer. He's not a professional auctioneer. He's just someone who's very gregarious and very comfortable speaking in front of people and was able to act as the auctioneer. The next auction is a silent auction, and this type uses bid sheets for each item for the auction with a minimum bid listed for each item. So bidders write in what they're willing to pay for any particular item up until a predetermined time when the bids close. And whomever has the highest bid at that closing time wins the item at that price. Then a chance auction, which you've also seen a couple of events in this presentation, refer to this as a Chinese auction. So in this particular case, people purchase tickets and walk around putting tickets in containers next to the item or items that they want to win. So then a winning ticket is drawn for each particular item. I think thank yous are extremely important when you're doing something like a signature event. I would say promptly and personally thanking everyone who supported you is probably one of the most important things that you can do. And you can see here on the left-hand side of the slide, I'm also involved. This is an event I worked on for New Yorkers for Better Libraries, which is a political action committee in New York State that raises money to make donations to state legislators who are in a position to help libraries out. So I worked with an event committee, and we hosted an event, and we had a small amount of people attend. It was mostly library directors and library trustees, but that was our target audience. It was $75 a ticket. We did quite well, and I hand wrote out thank yous to every single person who attended that event. and helped us raise about $6,000. And I think that's extra important in terms of a signature event where you're anticipating that you're going to do the event year after year. You need to thank people or they might not come again. And a thank you can also be an event that builds buzz for the next event that you're going to have. So on the right-hand side here, each attendee and sponsor from our first annual After Hours at the Library event received this invitation to come into the library for a ribbon cutting for the early literacy area that we created with the funds that we raised at that event. And then at the ribbon cutting, we also encouraged people to attend the second annual event, which was taking place 2 months later. We told them at that time, you know, we're raising funds now at the second annual event for the teen space at the library. And then, of course, thank yous at the event itself are very important. Make sure that you publicly thank any sponsors if you have them, volunteers who are working the event with you, and then any special guests that you might have, like your mayor or other government officials. Okay, quick tips for getting started. Know your community. It's really important to do a little bit of background research to find out who else is doing events in your community and when are they doing them. What kind of attendance do they get at the events that they're hosting? How much are they charging per ticket? Ask a few people in the community what they would think about an event either at the library or to benefit the library at another venue. Would they come to something like that? It's also important to research your community's event calendar because you don't want to schedule the library signature event the same night as a community theater production or a local hospital fundraiser because you're going to be drawing from the same potential audience. So you really want to try to get connected in your community with what else is going on. Another important piece of getting started is to put together a superstar event committee. You're going to want to choose committee members who are connectors in your community. And by connectors, I mean people who are involved in multiple community efforts. It could be a local business owner who's also in the Kiwanis Club. It could be a member of your local historical society who's also on your Friends of the Library board. It could be the husband of your mayor who's also a member of the Lions Club. You get the idea. It's just you want people who have multiple points of contact in the community to serve on your committee. They will help you get the word out about the event. They will take ownership in the event, and they will help you get people to the event. I will tell you that I do not recommend that your event committee be made up of only library employees, trustees, and friends, because I think one of the most important benefits of a signature event is that it exposes those who might not use the library or use it as much as you'd like them to use it to the library itself. So really kind of think broader than your library community, people who work there, etc. We're going to talk about planning in depth. I think planning is really important, and I also sent Jamie a basic planning worksheet for you to get started with. Budgeting is also important, and we're going to cover a sample budget worksheet that I put together for you. So we'll start with planning. And this is a picture of a planning worksheet that I put together. I wanted it to be something really simple because I know sometimes when you have multiple page planning worksheets, everyone just kind of loses interest. But this is meant to be used once you establish who your committee is. And working as a group, sit down and talk about events that each of you have attended and that you really like or you really hated, just to kind of get everything out on the table, and it will help everyone work together more effectively. Other portions on the planning worksheet, you really should have a mission statement, why you're doing the event. I gave you some sample reasons why people do signature events. Often it's to raise funds, but it could also be to generate publicity. So just be clear about why you're doing the event. You're going to put down some goals for yourself as a committee, and these are kind of your big picture things. And then for each goal, you're going to want to have objectives, which are specific, measurable, and hopefully realistic. If you're in a very, very small community, you aren't going to be doing a $100 ticket price. Even if you think that might be great because you'll raise all kinds of money, you need to be realistic about how many people are actually going to pay that price. It's not a bad idea as a committee at the initial meeting to talk about some format ideas. You know, what exactly is it that we're going to be doing? Are we going to host a dinner? Are we going to do a mini golf event, a 5K? And then also think about theme ideas. I showed you some examples. Booktoberfest. You know, what are the themes, ideas that everyone has, and how does it reflect the identity or the values of your library? So I'm going to go through and just show you a sample mission statement, some goals, and some objectives for a hypothetical event. So here's a simple sample mission statement. After Hours at the Library is an annual event that raises funds to support special projects at the Anytown Library. And then 3 sample goals, and again, these are the big picture things. We want to raise funds for the library. We also want to increase awareness for the role of the library in the community, and we want to generate positive publicity for the library. So those are our big picture goals. Next, we're going to look at objectives for each one of these goals. And again, these are just samples. So in fundraising, the committee could decide we want to raise $1,000 after expenses. That's our fundraising goal for the event. We also want to put together some sponsorship packages and secure at least $250 in event sponsorships. And we also would like the first year to sell at least 50 tickets. Objectives for the second goal of increasing awareness for the role of the library. We're going to develop an invitation list together of 200 people to include school staff, elected officials, business owners. We're going to post flyers about the event in at least 5 outside the library locations. And we're going to designate someone, sometimes it's the library director, it could be a committee member, to speak at local service clubs about the event and the project that it's raising money for. And then objectives for our third goal of generating positive publicity, we're going to present pre- and post-event news releases. The post-event will include photos from the event to whatever our local newspaper or news outlets might be. And then we're also going to invite the local news media to attend our event. So that's just a sample. I think planning is really, really important. You know, sometimes when you start thinking about doing an event, you just want to jump into it. But taking a little bit of time to do this planning piece with the event committee will make sure that everybody's in that rowboat going in the same direction, not spinning around in a circle. So I just highly recommend that you do at least some basic planning using something like the worksheets that I provided. So here's the budgeting worksheet. And this would be something that your event committee could use at the beginning stages of planning. And it's very important to remember that the more that you spend on event execution, the less event profit you will have. And sometimes there's negotiation that occurs within an event committee around this idea. I worked on an event a couple of years ago. I was part of the planning committee where one of the other committee members thought it was really important that we give every guest a takeaway with the organization's logo on it. And examples of takeaways, you saw the wine glass with the library's drawing on it. Sometimes it's a small box of chocolate. It's just something that an attendee walks away from the event with. And I had to disagree with her because I saw that our profit margin we weren't going to be able to charge a lot of money for this event. So the more expenses that we had going out, the less that we were going to bring in total in profit. So we had to negotiate with each other on that, and we ended up at something that was less expensive than what she had hoped to do, but that I felt better about in terms of our bottom line at the event, at the end of the event. So one really good way to look at this is to start at the end. So how much money do you want to make overall? So start there and kind of work backwards. So hypothetically, your event committee decides that you want to net $1,000 from your event. So net means, that's your revenue minus your expenses equals your net. So you'll need to work out as a committee what's reasonable to expect attendees to pay as a ticket price, and then what's reasonable to expect in sponsorships. And, every single revenue stream that you think you'll be able to accomplish, and then subtract out your expenses. And the first time you do any event, you're going to be guesstimating, but that's okay. And then what you come up with at the end is what your net is going to be, and that's what this budget worksheet is designed to help you do. So some potential event revenue sources, of course, ticket sales, sponsorships, silent auction, chance auction. If it's a literary event, you could be doing book sales and taking a portion of the profit from the book sales and revenue. And then on the expense side, if you decide to do invitations, that would be an expense. A facility rental if you're having your event off-site. Of course, your food and your drink, T-shirts or other giveaways. Sometimes you have to rent table linens for your tables, and then there might also be insurance and licensing costs on the expense side. Subtract the expenses from the revenue, and you end up with your net profit. Okay, I like to end with this slide because it has been my experience in both events that I've organized and events that I've attended that the most important things to make your event successful don't cost any money. And the first one is to smile. And by this I mean choose your event ambassadors carefully, the people who are going to be greeting people as they come into your event. You want every guest to be greeted with a smile and with appreciation for attending the event and purchasing the ticket. This will really set the tone for the entire event. One of the signature events that I attended that's in this presentation, I'm not going to fess up to which one it is, but I walked in and there was no one to greet me, and we really didn't know where we were supposed to go. And it just kind of put the whole night off on a bad foot for me. I didn't enjoy it as much as I would have if I'd walked in and someone had said, oh, thank you so much for coming. Here's where you put your code, and the rest of the event is taking place over here. So just have people who are friendly and who are going to smile. Music is really important to set the tone, especially if you're having the event in your library. Even if it's a CD player with some music as background, can make a really big impact about how people feel about your event. Live music is wonderful. Some of the events that I've worked on in Brockport, one year we had the elementary school music teacher came in and brought his keyboard and was playing background music, and I think we just gave him a small stipend for his time. If the event is taking place at your library, clean. Have someone just take a look around with a fresh set of eyes. We work in our libraries every day, so we don't tend to see things that others do. But I've walked into library bathrooms at events where there are peeling signs on the bathroom stalls and the trash cans haven't been emptied. So if you're doing it in your library, just make sure you go through and that it's as clean as it can be. Photographs and social media can be so important. They don't really cost anything. Assign a staff person to take photographs. If you have a Facebook page, Twitter, post photos from the event. It really creates buzz in the community. And remember, with a signature event, your hope is that it's something that you're going to repeat year after year. So you want people who didn't attend the first year to feel bad about that and to be looking forward to getting the invitation for year 2 of the event. Invitations, you really don't have to have invitations professionally printed. One of my favorite formats for invitations, and you saw a picture of it, the after hours at the event, it's just made in Publisher. You could also do it in Microsoft Word. It's a little tear off at the bottom where people RSVP and attach their check. It's really less about how slick and glossy the invitations are. It's how you present the information. If you're going to charge $20 to $25 a ticket for an evening event, you don't want to use cutesy clip art. You want to make it, you want it on paper to reflect what the tone of the event is going to be. So here's some of those additional resources. At the very bottom of the list is my Pinterest page where, as I said, most of the images from this webinar, invitations, and photographs are posted. The library mini golf vendor, if you just want to take a look, if you're interested in mini golf, this is a company out of Massachusetts. I don't think he goes as far west as Wisconsin, but you can see a bunch of different ideas around mini golf events in libraries on that minigolf.org site. Murder mysteries, I didn't discuss in this presentation mostly because I've heard of very successful ones in libraries, but I've never attended a successful one. I went to one that wasn't very successful. But there's a place online called nightofmystery.com where you can go and you can actually purchase a kit for a do-it-yourself murder mystery. So if you're a librarian who's very creative and you want to pursue something like that, I would take a look at that. And then also some basic information about how to do a 5K. So I guess I would just finish the presentation with, think about what you could do at your library. Think about your community. Do some planning. Think about the reasons why you're pursuing a signature event. And they're a lot of fun, and they can be a wonderful, wonderful tool to do community building in addition to fundraising. And Jamie, that's all that I have prepared for us.
Okay, so if any of you have any questions for Cassie, we do have some time to take those. Cassie, do you have a slide with your contact information? Or
I do not.
Okay.
But I'm happy to.
I can share that actually in the
Yes,
follow-up. So
that would be great.
Okay, I will share Cassie's contact information in the follow-up email. Cassie, I'm curious. You mentioned that you probably would be starting some kind of signature event at your new library. Do you have any thoughts as to what you might start or create?
I really liked what I did in Brockport for after hours at the library, just the opportunity for people to come in when the library was closed. A lot of people, adults, thought that was a really neat thing. Oh, I'm in the library and I can really shout and yell and run around in the stacks. And I said, yes, you can. So that's kind of my initial thought, is maybe to pursue something similar to something I've already done, which is usually my impulse, because reinventing the wheel is not something I'm fond of. But I haven't quite figured it out yet. I started here on August 1st. It's a very large community, much larger staff than I've ever supervised before. So I'm just kind of biding my time. But usually summertime is when I really start thinking about these things.
Great. And no one asked us, but I have a feeling a lot of people were thinking it when you walked us through the slide of the chocolate in the stacks event. And,
yes.
and you know what I'm going to ask you. But
go ahead.
Were you concerned about getting chocolate on the books, or were people concerned about that?
No, no. It wasn't my library. It wasn't my event. But as a general rule, people take home library books, and they could drop it in the toilet for all you know.
Right.
So I don't obsess too much about what goes on in the library with the materials in the books. So that probably wouldn't have been a consideration. And I don't really, I'm thinking back to my memory of the event. People weren't really picking up books.
Right.
They were really focused on, the social aspects of it.
Okay. That makes sense.
I haven't been asked that before. That's a good one,
though. And another thing I was going to ask is, someone mentioned about serving liquor in the library, and something I guess I would suggest is to check with your municipality.
Absolutely.
You would probably need a liquor license of some sort to do that.
Well, I can speak to New York State, which I'm guessing is similar to Wisconsin, but I don't know for sure. If you have a caterer come in, if you're paying a caterer who's going to pour, usually the insurance and the licensing comes with the caterer.
Sure.
If you're going to try and do it on it's the same thing as, we have a lot of wineries in this part of the state, so usually when a winery comes in to do a tasting, they come with everything that you need. If you're going to do it on your own, you absolutely have to check. You do not want to get involved in getting in trouble over that. And I will also say that you don't have to have alcohol. You can do a chocolate and coffee tasting. You can do a lot of really nice ideas that don't involve alcohol at all. And I think coffee and chocolate tastings are just a fun idea.
Or to make it more kid-friendly, you could even do chocolate and hot chocolate or hot cocoa or something.
Exactly.
Exactly. I do believe you said at the session at PLA that wine is a great social lubricant. And I love that quote.
I'm not sure if I said that or my co-presenter. It actually sounds like my co-presenter.
Okay, maybe he said that.
But it really can be, and I'm not trying to be flippant about alcohol. But, when people come to an event and you're doing it the right way where no one's getting overserved and people have a glass or two of wine and they're walking around your giving tree, it is a great social lubricant. Many people have more fun if they're able to have a glass of wine at an event. And it's been my experience that people tend to open their checkbooks up sometimes when they've had a glass or two.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Well, on that note, we're just about out of time, Cassie. So
okay.
As I mentioned to all of you in the audience, you will be getting a link to the recording, a link to the slides, a link to both the budgeting handout and the planning sheet, and I'll make sure I include Cassie's information as well if you need to contact her. So thank you again, Cassie, for all of the awesome information, and thank you to all of you who listened in. We hope you got some good ideas that maybe you'd like to try out at your library. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day and a great week as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.